want to preface this entire video by starting off with the fact that I still love my Tesla Model 3. Plenty of performance for me, I didn't need all-wheel drive, and I have put a ton of miles on this car, so I feel like I know it pretty well, and I knew that when I bought it, this was the type of vehicle that we were gonna own forever. Like, we had no intention on flipping it or selling it, and the goal with this car was ultimately to just drive it until it stopped moving, and that's part of the reason I was so excited about the lithium iron phosphate battery pack inside. I wanted to see how this iron-based battery would age, and there were some people out there claiming that LFP could be the million-mile battery, and I still have my skepticism around whether or not the vehicle will actually hit that. Maybe the battery pack could, but I question if everything around the vehicle will last that long. But I figured the best way is to buy one, drive the crap out of it, and see how it ages over time. But I will admit now that coming up on 3 years of ownership, there's certainly some things I didn't expect to come with owning this Model 3, and things I'm going to keep in mind for the future. I'm not really in any immediate hurry to replace it or to buy another vehicle, but there are just some factors that are now going to play into my next electric vehicle purchase, however long from now that may be, that I wasn't completely considering or thinking about back when I initially bought that one. So for one, top priorities for me are absolutely NACS. I'm not interested in buying any vehicle with CCS, even if it's a really good deal, even if it's a used car, just because I've watched way too many videos of people road tripping with CCS vehicles and having inconsistent experiences with Electrify America or ChargePoint or EVgo. So regardless of what brand I use in the future, I want to make sure that it's on the more modern charge connector. I also just love how easy to hold and grab and manipulate the NACS plug is. It just feels like it was actually designed by humans instead of a committee. And while I know there's a lot of CCS infrastructure right now, and usually every time I complain about it, I get a few comments that say, hey, I've never had issues with CCS, and I'm happy for you if you haven't, but I'm not the type of guy that buys and flips cars every couple of years. I'm the type of guy to buy something and then hold it for hopefully decades. And I know that long term, we're moving towards the J3400 standard, and there's probably going to come a time in the not too distant future where all new DC fast charging equipment is just going to have NACS and no other options. And then CCS will become the new CHAdeMO, basically what the old Nissan Leafs were using, and you'll be stuck in adapter hell for life, and I don't want to deal with that. I would rather just grab the cable, plug in, and it starts working. So that's important to me, and that's a non-negotiable one. Also, the second point that I wanted to emphasize is I care about efficiency. I definitely not the kind of person that wants to buy an EV just for, you know, super luxurious interiors, and I don't care if it costs more than gasoline. No, on a side tangent from EVs for a second, the only reason I'm interested in talking about electric vehicles, and the only real reason I'm comfortable with the concept of buying some of them new, is because I know that the operating expense can be far lower than that of a combustion engine vehicle. And yeah, EVs can have higher insurance and higher registration costs, but when you drive as frequently as I do, you save a lot of money simply by not having to pay for gas stations. And usually where I see the biggest maintenance costs on my previously owned gas vehicles is when it comes to the engine acting up. When something goes wrong with that combustion engine, it can oftentimes cost hundreds or thousands of dollars just to get the starter working again, or to replace the head gasket, or to fix the transmission. There's so many extra moving parts, and that's part of the reason I'm so interested in EVs, is it just kind of gets rid of all of this complexity, all of these points of failure. And sure, there might be little things that can go wrong with an EV. Maybe a door doesn't latch properly, maybe a seat sensor isn't working the way it's supposed to, but those little things aren't as big a deal to me as like, oh, something's wrong with the engine, now the vehicle doesn't run anymore, like now it can't physically move. I'm sure there could be some growing issues with my Model 3 as I own it for many years to come, but what I expect to keep working reliably is the motor and the battery pack. That means the vehicle keeps moving, it keeps running. So that's the more appealing thing to me about electric vehicles. So my point is, with reason number 2, efficiency matters, okay? I'm not willing to buy even a good deal on a used EV if it ends up consuming 500 watt hours per mile, you know, at that expense. Now, especially on a road trip, if you're paying for expensive DC fast charging, then it starts to not even save you money versus gas. And I've seen, unfortunately, a lot of EVs that have become somewhat affordable with the purchase price, like an F-150 Lightning, but the efficiency is not all there to the point where I'm like, yeah, but it's cool that it's electric and I'm glad it has so much extra storage space, but it's just going to use so much energy per mile mile that I don't really consider that as an option because it's going to rack up my home electric bill substantially, and in my opinion, the range of considerable efficiency is like pretty much don't go below about 3 miles per kilowatt hour. If you're in the range of 3 to 3.5 miles per kilowatt hour, it's certainly not the best efficiency out there, but that's usually within the range of, okay, this will save you money versus a equivalently sized gas vehicle. But once you start dipping below 3, if your EV is averaging 2.6 or 2.2 miles per kilowatt hour, that's when it's like, okay, yeah, with the higher insurance and the higher registration, you're not really saving money on this thing. Maybe you're buying it because it's fast or because it's great at off-roading or something, but that's not really a huge emphasis for me. So if you can get over 3 miles per kilowatt hour, that's when I'm like, okay, we'll talk. And then you start getting over 4, then I'm like, hey, that's great. Now we're talking some real cost savings the more you drive this thing. Once we get over 5, holy crap, now I'm actually getting excited. Now I'm willing to pay a bit of a premium because I know how much money I'm going to save on electricity in the long run with this vehicle. So that's what gets me excited about Lucid's vehicles as well as the Tesla Cybercab. I really want them to sell that with a steering wheel and pedals, but that does bring me into point number 4, something that I definitely did not consider when buying my Model 3 back in 2022, and that's brand image and identity. Not something I thought I would care about this much until I actually owned one of these vehicles. But, you know, initially I bought my Model 3 because, of course, I loved the supercharger network. I knew that it was expansive. I knew there was a ton of superchargers available and new ones coming in. I knew the Model 3 had NACS, and I knew it had an LFP battery pack, and it had really great software that still feels like very few on the market can actually touch the usability and simplicity of the Tesla user interface. But now that I've owned it for a while, and don't get me wrong, I still love it. I still plan on driving it until it doesn't move, but the number of times I've got into political discussions or people have brought up Elon when I show up in my Model 3 was way, way more than I was initially expecting. And I try to make it as clear as I can on this channel. I am not a very political guy. I don't enjoy talking about politics. I don't really associate with either end of the political spectrum because I feel like the more you get into politics, just the more angry and stressed out you get. So I do my best to just not talk about it. That's actually one of the reasons I'm so interested in technology, is because it's usually just a debate of what the best methods are for making a more enjoyable future. How do we make our vehicles more affordable, and how do we make them faster and cheaper to operate? Or how do we make aircraft faster? How do we make flying more convenient? Or how do we make our smartphones more easy to use and more fun? There's just a lot more positivity pursuit when it comes to technology, whereas in politics, I just feel like each side gets more and more hateful towards the other. They're always trying to make fun of each other, and I just don't want anything to do with it. But there's so many circumstances where I've met all kinds of different people that think that I'm interested in having a political conversation because I own a Tesla. And yes, Elon is certainly to blame for a lot of this stuff, and that's why I still have been saying for years, I think he should leave the company. And it's not even about him not necessarily bringing value to the brand. For me, a lot of it just comes down to the associations with Tesla, and the guy's freaking busy enough as is, trying to fix federal government, trying to work on SpaceX, Neuralink, and Twitter all simultaneously. I just think there's way too much going on, and Tesla's a big enough brand managing so many different logistics that they deserve a full-time CEO. I don't think the role of CEO is worth being a part-time gig or something you can do remotely. And in more recent months and years, I'm getting just a bit tired of showing up in Teslas in different locations and meeting friends, meeting family members, and them going, oh, I see you drive a Tesla, so what do you think of Elon? Did you see what Elon did? And I'm like, no, I don't care. I don't want to go there. And I didn't expect that to come up as often as it does. So as much as I love my Model 3, I'm gonna think twice, I think, in the future when it comes to replacing it if one day it ever does stop working, or there are some decent options in Tesla's lineup. And I still think they make incredible vehicles. They're still fantastic products with great efficiency, great autonomy features, and they've kind of chilled out on charging performance in recent years. They haven't really improved that much, but overall, especially as a content creator, I think this matters more to me than I initially expected. When you buy a vehicle, I think you're kind of buying into certain communities to a certain extent. And the next EV I buy, I think, is definitely going to have an effect on the direction of this channel and what kind of people are attracted to the content I make. And that makes me a bit more considerate of other brands out there in the future, because I basically want to drive a vehicle that encourages people to ask questions that circulate back into the vehicle or the science and technology in itself. I don't want to drive a vehicle that encourages people to talk talk about the CEO of the brand or encourages people to talk about politics, because that gets old to me really, really fast. And if I'm gonna drive an EV and that's gonna spark all kinds of discussions or interesting conversations, I would rather spark conversations and spark curiosity with a vehicle that is much more fun to talk about than, like whatever Elon's latest statement was. But because the software is getting better on non-Teslas out there, Rivian has certainly come a long way. But again, the affordability factor is there for me, so that's why I'm keeping a sharp eye on the R2, because I love the design, I love the utility and the practicality of it, but I'm questioning if the efficiency is there. I still think there's a chance that the R2 is not going to be that aerodynamic or energy efficient, and that might turn me off from wanting one, because I'll be like, yeah, charging speed might not be all that great. I'm glad that it has NACS, but those 4695 cells probably are not going to cool as easily as 2170s, and I think there's a chance it'll get about 3 miles per kilowatt hour, maybe in the real world a bit lower. So that could be a deal breaker for me. So that has me very interested in Lucid. I want to see where their direction is with the mid-size vehicle. I think it could be the first crossover in the US that's actually more energy efficient than a Model Y. No one has been able to touch the Model Y, but I care about car camping, so it's important to me to have a decent amount of storage space in the back so that you can lay out a little mattress and sleep in it. Run the HVAC overnight. We did that a lot with my Model 3 over the past few years. But I have to admit, from what I've seen in Lucid Air and Lucid Gravity, the software has certainly come a long way, but it still doesn't feel as intuitive or as streamlined as what we've seen in the Rivian. I feel like Rivian is at least a little bit more on top of it when it comes to mobile app design and keeping the software simple and clean and elegant. Rivian's got like YouTube compatibility, which is really important to me because I watch a lot of YouTube in the car while I'm charging and waiting in the car, which I do often. And I don't feel like Lucid is completely there yet. I'm glad to see they have CarPlay support, but it still just feels like they're a few steps behind Rivian. And of course, when it comes to the EV startups, we can find vehicle options that are extremely catered to my needs, like the Aptera, of course. Love the software design, love the CarPlay compatibility, and of course, I'm a big fan of solar on EVs, so having the ability to charge itself for free everywhere it goes, that really, really leans into my economical efficiency argument and priority with EVs. That's why it's kind of nutty to me that even though this isn't a Tesla, it will get more miles for cheaper at Tesla superchargers, even with the non-membership pricing, which no other EV will be able to say. Even if the Lucid midsize gets 5 miles per kilowatt hour, it will still probably cost more on a road trip because you're stopping at superchargers, and those are going to cost more than what a Tesla Model Y would get. Because it's a Tesla, it gets cheaper kilowatt hours. So even though the Model Y may not be as energy efficient as the Lucid midsize, it's still probably cheaper on a road trip because the efficiency gain on the Lucid isn't as drastic. But the Aptera's efficiency gain is so drastic, and a lot of the time I'm just driving by myself or with my wife in the car, so 2 seats would be fine for me. And I know from firsthand experience that the Aptera absolutely gives you a lot of attention. You're going to meet your neighbors. Everybody who sees you get out of this vehicle, even if you're parking in public, is going to ask you about it. And that's probably one of my biggest issues with it, is it definitely attracts a lot of attention, but I'm glad the attention it attracts encourages curiosity and education. Like, everybody who comes up to the Aptera wants to know, why does it look like that? What's going on? And then you get to tell them, well, it's about aerodynamics. It's about energy efficiency. And when you make a vehicle this efficient, solar starts to add meaningful range back, and then it gets the gears turning in their head. So just from driving around Aptera's PI builds a little bit, I was able to experience that firsthand. Everywhere you go, people want to ask questions about this vehicle. And while I get a little bit annoyed with people asking me questions in public, I do love that the questions it gets people to ask encourages them to go, oh, really? I didn't know aero played that big a factor. And oh, I didn't realize that there's a company actually putting solar cells on EVs. I've heard so many people say, I thought of that years ago. Why aren't more people doing that? And it comes down to miles per kilowatt hour. That's the main reason you have to do it this way. And I would basically love to build more and more of my channel and my fan base around a community that cares about the types of things that Aptera prioritizes in their vehicle. So that would certainly fit my needs really, really well. Checks the NACS box, checks the software box. They did a wonderful job with the app and with the onboard central display. And of course, I'm very biased in this regard because I work for this company, but Tello also prioritizes a lot of the things that I would look for in an EV. Actually, one of the coolest things about the Model 3 that I didn't expect to love as much as I do is the proportions. Like, I can cram a ton of stuff in the trunk with the second row seats down. I've moved Tello seat parts in the back of my Model 3, and I can still fit my tripod and camera gear in the front frunk. It's a pretty spacious frunk. So I love vehicles that can fit a lot of practicality into a tiny form factor, and that's one advantage that I would give to the Tello truck. You know, it's definitely not as energy efficient as the Aptera, targeting about 3.3 miles per kilowatt hour, so on the lower end of efficiency that I would consider acceptable, but still, it's over 3, which matters to me, and I absolutely would not consider buying any truck at this point that doesn't have a mid-gate, because there's so many times where I've needed to load something that's a little bit longer than what a traditional truck bed or trunk can fit in the back, so just being able to fold down those second row seats makes a huge difference to me. And I also would care about the camper shell attachment so that I could go camping in it and run the HVAC all night. Still got the NACS port, still got the affordability, and really easy to park and fit into tight spaces. So there's all kinds of variables and things to think about when buying your next EV. I don't think most people need to worry too much about the brand association or what kind of questions or curiosity is sparked by the vehicle you drive, because most people aren't YouTubers, most people aren't making content on this kind of stuff, but those are just some of the things I'm looking for in my next EV. Care about the efficiency, care about the affordability, care about the software, but also I want to make sure that wherever I show up in this vehicle, people don't immediately start asking me about their political preferences. So feel free to let me know what your priorities are for your next electric vehicle down in the comments below. And thank you to everybody supporting this channel directly. It seriously helps us out a ton, as does just watching these videos. So thanks again. Have an excellent rest of your day.